Nobody wrote about this food at the time. The food magazines of the 1970s were covering green bean casserole pots and Hoover stew. The cookbooks that got reviewed in major newspapers were covering dinner party menus. Nobody was covering the woman in the ranch house in Indiana who had 50 cents of hamburger meat and a can of tomatoes and 4 children coming through the door at 3:30. Number 22 appeared in a spiral notebook from a PTA fundraiser in Akron, Ohio in 1971, sold for 50 cents in the school parking lot. Number 14 was described by the woman who made it as the meal that got the family through the winter of 1975. These are 25 forgotten $2 meals that kept 1970s working families full. If you love vintage recipes, subscribe, because every day we bring back the meals America forgot. The countdown starts now. Shipwreck casserole. Few dishes have a better name than shipwreck casserole, and few better capture the resourceful spirit of the 1970s working kitchen. It began appearing in cookbooks in the 1940s and was a fixture through the mid-70s. A layered bake of ground beef, rice, onion, canned tomatoes, and kidney beans, assembled raw in a casserole dish and baked covered until everything cooked through together. Ground beef cost 85 cents a pound in 1974. A can of tomatoes was 12 cents. Rice, beans, and onion added another quarter. Total under $1.30 for a dish that fed 6. You layered sliced onion, raw rice, raw ground beef crumbled over, kidney beans, and canned tomatoes in a deep casserole. You seasoned with salt and pepper. You covered tightly with foil and baked at 350 degrees for 90 minutes. The rice cooked in the tomato liquid, the beef cooked in the steam. The beans softened into the broth. Everything arrived at the table at once, unified and deeply savory. Hoover stew. Named for Herbert Hoover, the president presiding over the Depression and still being made in working households 40 years later, Hoover stew was macaroni or spaghetti simmered with hot dogs, canned tomatoes, and canned corn in a single pot until the pasta absorbed the liquid and everything went thick and savory. A package of hot dogs cost 49 cents in 1973. Macaroni was a quarter. Canned tomatoes and corn added 20 cents. Total under $1 for a pot that fed 6. You sliced hot dogs into coins. You added them to a pot with macaroni, canned tomatoes, canned corn, and water. You simmered until the pasta was tender and had absorbed most of the liquid. The hot dogs plumped in the heat. The pasta went red from the tomato. The corn added sweetness. The whole pot went thick and filling. Johnny Marzetti. Johnny Marzetti is what Ohio called it. American chop suey is what New England called it. Beefaroni is what came out of a can. But the original, the baked version that appeared on Ohio church supper tables beginning in the 1920s and reached its peak popularity in the 1970s, was something specific. Ground beef, egg noodles, tomato sauce, and cheddar cheese baked together until the whole thing bubbled and the cheese browned on top. Ground beef cost 85 cents in 1973. Egg noodles were a quarter. Tomato sauce and cheese added 30 cents. Total under $1.40 for a casserole that fed 8. You browned beef with onion. You combined it with cooked noodles, tomato sauce, and shredded cheddar. You poured it into a casserole and topped with more cheese. You baked at 350 for 30 minutes. The cheese went golden on top. The noodles absorbed the tomato sauce. The beef distributed through every bite. Red flannel hash. Red flannel hash is the dish that made Monday's supper out of Sunday's leftovers. Corned beef, boiled potatoes, and beets all chopped together and fried in a skillet until a crust formed on the bottom, and the beets turned everything a brilliant deep red. Leftover corned beef cost almost nothing. A can of beets was 20 cents. Potatoes added 10 cents. Total under 40 cents when made from Sunday's leftovers. You diced the corned beef and potatoes and beets into small pieces. You packed everything into a hot skillet with butter and pressed it flat. You cooked without stirring until the bottom went dark and crusted. You folded it over. The crust was the whole point. Dark and salty and slightly... Pineapple casserole. This is the one that sounds most impossible until you taste it. A southern casserole of canned pineapple chunks baked with sharp cheddar cheese and buttery cracker crumbs that served as both a side dish and, in the leanest weeks, a main course for families who treated it as a meal. A can of pineapple cost 29 cents in 1974. Sharp cheddar was 60 cents a block. Ritz crackers added 15 cents. Total, under $1.05 for a dish that fed 6 as a side. You combined pineapple chunks and their juice with flour, sugar, and shredded sharp cheddar. You spread it in a baking dish. You mixed crushed Ritz crackers with melted butter and spread them over the top. You baked at 350 for 30 minutes. The crackers went golden. The cheese melted into the pineapple. The sweetness of the fruit and the sharpness of the cheddar met in the middle. Ham and noodle casserole. The casserole that turned a leftover ham bone or a cup of diced ham into a complete dinner. Egg noodles baked with diced ham in a cream sauce, topped with breadcrumbs and butter until golden. Diced ham or leftover ham cost under 50 cents in 1973. Egg noodles were a quarter. Cream of mushroom soup was 20 cents. Total under $1 for a casserole that fed 5. You cooked egg noodles and combined them with diced ham, cream of mushroom soup thinned with milk, and shredded cheddar. You topped with buttered breadcrumbs. You baked at 350 for 30 minutes. The cream sauce went rich throughout. The ham flavored every noodle. The breadcrumb top went golden and crisp. Green bean casserole on a budget. The Campbell's Soup Company recipe that debuted in 1955 and reached the full extent of its popularity in the 1970s. Green beans, cream of mushroom soup, and crispy fried onions, made not for Thanksgiving, but for a Tuesday when the grocery money was thin. A can of green beans cost 15 cents in 1972. Cream of mushroom soup was 20 cents. A can of fried onions was 35 cents. Total under 70 cents for a casserole that fed 6. You combined drained green beans with cream of mushroom soup thinned with milk and half the fried onions. You spread it in a baking dish. You baked at 350 for 25 minutes, then topped with the remaining onions and baked 5 minutes more. The onions went crisp on top. The sauce went creamy below. The beans softened throughout. Green bean casserole had broken free from its Thanksgiving-only reputation by the mid-70s. Advertisements from Campbell's Soup heavily promoted the dish year-round, and working families who needed a vegetable dish that cost under $1 and required no particular skill responded accordingly. Under 70 cents, 30 minutes. A vegetable dish that children would actually eat. Squash casserole. The southern casserole that turned the summer's abundance of yellow squash into a creamy, cheesy baked dish that appeared in nearly every southern community cookbook of the decade and has since largely disappeared from dinner tables outside the region. Yellow squash cost almost nothing in summer. A can of cream of chicken soup was 20 cents. Cheddar and crackers added 25 cents. Total under 60 cents for a casserole that fed 6. You sliced squash and cooked it in butter with onion until soft. You combined it with cream of chicken soup, sour cream, shredded cheddar, and crushed Ritz crackers. You topped with more crackers and baked at 350 for 35 minutes. The squash went completely tender inside the casserole. The cream sauce absorbed the squash flavor. The cracker top went golden. Liver and onions. The cheapest protein at the butcher counter throughout the 1970s. beef liver dredged in flour and fried fast with onions until the outside crisped and the inside stayed just barely pink, served with the caramelized onions draped over the top. Beef liver cost 12 cents a pound in 1972. Today, around $2.49. Onions, flour, and butter added 15 cents. Total under 30 cents for a meal that fed 4.
Potato and sausage soup. The one-pot supper that simmered sliced smoked sausage with diced potatoes and onion and chicken broth until thick and deeply savory. A soup that ate like a full meal and cost under $1.50 for a family of 5. Smoked sausage cost 59 cents in 1973. Potatoes were 20 cents for 5 pounds. Chicken broth and onion added 15 cents. Total under $1 for a pot that fed 5. You sliced sausage and browned it briefly. You added diced potato, onion, chicken broth, and water. You simmered 30 minutes until the potatoes went completely tender and the broth turned slightly thick. The sausage flavored the entire pot. The potatoes softened and broke down slightly at the edges. The broth went savory and smoky. Potato and sausage soup appeared on working family tables across the country, not in any particular cookbook, but in the general understanding that sausage, potatoes, and broth were 3 things that belonged together and cost almost nothing when they were put together right. Under $1, 30 minutes, 1 pot, 5 people warm. Wacky cake. The cake that required no eggs, no butter, and no mixing bowl, poured directly into the baking pan where baking soda and vinegar worked together to make it rise, and which cost under 40 cents for a cake that fed 12. Flour, sugar, and cocoa cost 15 cents in 1974. Oil and vinegar added 10 cents. Total under 30 cents for a cake that fed 12. You made 3 wells in the dry ingredients already in the pan. You poured oil into one, vinegar into the second, and vanilla into the third. You poured cold water over everything and stirred with a fork until combined. You baked at 350 degrees for 35 minutes. The cake rose without eggs because the vinegar reacted with the baking soda. The crumb was fine and moist. The chocolate was direct and real. Wacky cake originated in the Depression when eggs and butter were luxuries, and it remained in working family rotation through the 1970s because it still worked and the budget still required it. A cake for 30 cents that fed 12 people is a form of domestic mathematics that deserves respect. Under 30 cents, 35 minutes, no bowl to wash. Bean soup from the ham bone. The soup that made Monday's ham last until Thursday. The leftover ham bones simmered with dried beans, onion, and carrot until the beans went completely soft and the broth turned smoky and deep. A ham bone cost almost nothing in 1972. A bag of dried navy beans was 25 cents. Onion and carrot added 10 cents. Total under 40 cents for a pot that fed 8. You soaked beans overnight. You simmered them with the ham bone, onion, carrot, and water for 3 hours until the beans went completely soft and the ham had given everything it had to give. The beans dissolved slightly into the broth and thickened it. The ham fell from the bone. The broth turned deep and smoky. Bean soup from a ham bone is the meal that turned a waste product into the best supper of the week, and it has been doing so in American kitchens since before the country was a country. The 1970s working family that saved the bone did not need to be told why. They already knew. Chicken and rice with cream of mushroom. The hands-off casserole that cooked itself, raw chicken pieces laid over uncooked rice in a cream of mushroom soup mixture, covered tightly and baked until the rice absorbed everything and the chicken went tender. A whole chicken cost 79 cents a pound in 1973. Cream of mushroom soup was 20 cents. Rice was 10 cents a cup. Total under $1.50 for a dish that fed 6. You spread dry rice in a greased casserole dish.
You mixed cream of mushroom soup with water and poured it over. You laid chicken pieces on top. You covered with foil and baked at 350 for 90 minutes. The rice cooked in the soup mixture and absorbed it completely. The chicken went tender and golden at the edges. The casserole required no stirring and no attention. This was the recipe that working parents came home to find already done, assembled before leaving in the morning, baked in the afternoon by a family member who only needed to turn the oven on. The hands-off nature of it was not a shortcut, it was a system. Under $1.50, 90 minutes unattended, one dish to wash. Baked macaroni and cheese from scratch. Not from a box, the baked version made from a roux of butter and flour, milk, and shredded sharp cheddar, poured over elbow macaroni and baked until the top went golden and the edges bubbled. Elbow macaroni was 25 cents in 1972. Sharp cheddar was 30 cents for the amount needed. Milk and butter added 15 cents. Total under 70 cents for a casserole that fed 8. You made a roux, whisked in milk to make a bechamel, added shredded sharp cheddar, and combined it with cooked macaroni in a casserole dish. You topped with more cheese and breadcrumbs and baked at 350 for 30 minutes. The cheese sauce went deep into every tube of macaroni. The top went golden. The edges went slightly crisp. Baked macaroni and cheese from scratch was the dish that many working families made before the Kraft box made it unnecessary, and then continued to make alongside the box because the two were not the same thing. Tuna and rice. A can of tuna, $1.20. A cup of rice, 30 cents. Butter, soy, or vinegar, black pepper, under $2. You warm the rice with a pat of butter until each grain glistens. You flake the tuna in and fold it through, off the heat, so it stays tender instead of going dry and stringy. A splash of vinegar cuts the oil. Japanese-American families made this in California through the 1950s and 60s. It was simple, it was fast, and it never made it into a single mainstream American cookbook. Canned tuna is soft, high protein, and shelf-stable. Rice keeps for a year. This is a supper you can make from a pantry with nothing fresh in the house at all. Chipped beef on toast. A jar of dried beef, $2. Milk, butter, flour, bread. Under $2.50 and it makes 2 suppers. You tear the beef into shreds and warm it in butter until the edge is crisp. You add flour, then milk, and it thickens into a gravy the color of old ivory. It smells salty and rich. You pour it over toast, thick. Military, and every American soldier from 1910 to 1975 knows exactly what this is. They brought it home and it became a Sunday night supper in a million houses. Soft, salty, high protein. And it takes 8 minutes from cold pan to hot plate, which is roughly how long a person can comfortably stand at a counter. Milk toast with nutmeg. 2 slices of bread, 30 cents. A cup of milk, 30 cents. Butter, sugar, a grating of nutmeg. Under $1 for the whole supper. You toast the bread dark and butter it while it is hot. You warm the milk with a little sugar until it steams but never boils. You tear the toast into a bowl and pour the warm milk over and grate nutmeg across the top. The bread swells and softens. The butter rises and pools. It smells like every kitchen you have ever been safe in. This has been on American tables since 1876. Cheese whiz on celery. The cool, crunchy, no-cook supper that filled celery sticks with processed cheese spread. A snack that became dinner on the nights nobody could face the stove. A jar of Cheese Whiz cost 59 cents in 1972. Today, around $4.49. A bunch of celery. Total then, under 70 cents. Today, under $6. Fed 4. You wash and trim the celery. You spread Cheese Whiz into the groove of each stalk. You cut them into pieces. The celery stays cool and crunchy. The cheese spread is rich and salty. The two textures play against each other. Cheese Whiz launched in 1952 and quickly became an American convenience staple. By 1972, stuffed celery was a fast, no-cook supper and snack in homes everywhere. No cooking, no heat, crunchy supper in 5 minutes. Toast with tomato and mayo. The summer supper of the South. A thick slice of ripe tomato on toast with a swipe of mayonnaise and a shake of salt. 3 ingredients, no cooking, pure comfort. A garden tomato cost nothing. White bread and mayonnaise. Total then under 20 cents. Today under $3. Fed 2. You toast the bread. You spread it with mayonnaise. You lay thick slices of ripe tomato on top with salt and pepper. The toast crunches. The tomato is cool and juicy. The mayonnaise ties it together. The tomato and mayo toast came from southern summer cooking, where ripe tomatoes were abundant. By 1972, it was a fast, no-cook supper in homes across the South. Toast, tomato, mayo. Summer supper in 3 minutes. Peanut butter toast with banana. The 2-minute supper that delivered protein, potassium, and genuine satisfaction for under $1. Thick peanut butter on warm toast with sliced banana. 2 slices of bread cost 22 cents. 2 tablespoons of peanut butter are 30 cents. Half a banana is 15 cents. Total under 70 cents. You toast the bread dark. You spread peanut butter on it while it is still warm, so it softens and melts slightly into the surface. You lay banana slices across the top. The peanut butter goes warm and rich. The banana adds sweetness. The toast holds everything. Peanut butter toast came from Depression-era American cooking, when peanut butter was one of the cheapest proteins available. By the 1970s, it was a one-person supper nationwide. 70 cents, no cooking required. Fills you for hours. Stewed tomatoes over bread. The supper that turned a can of stewed tomatoes and a slice of bread into a warm, filling bowl. One of the oldest poverty meals in the American South. A can of stewed tomatoes costs $1.19. 2 slices of bread are 22 cents. Butter and sugar add 10 cents. Total under $1.55. You heat the stewed tomatoes with a pat of butter and a pinch of sugar until they bubble. You tear bread into a bowl. You ladle the hot tomatoes over the bread. The bread swells and soaks up the tomato. The butter enriches it. The sugar takes the edge off the acid. Stewed tomatoes over bread came from Appalachian and Southern poverty cooking. By the 1970s, it was still a one-person supper in rural homes. Under $1.55. 5 minutes. Warm and filling from almost nothing. Baked potato with butter and salt. The supper that the microwave made possible in 7 minutes. A whole potato cooked until fluffy, split open, and loaded with butter, salt, and pepper. 1 russet potato costs 40 cents. A generous pat of butter is 10 cents. Total under 55 cents. You microwave the potato on high for 7 minutes, turning halfway. You split it open while it steams. You press the ends together so the inside rises fluffy and white. You add butter, salt, and pepper. The skin goes crisp. The inside goes fluffy and hot. The butter melts into every crack. The baked potato as a one-person meal came from Irish and English tradition. By the 1970s, the microwave made it a 7-minute supper available to anyone. Under 55 cents. 7 minutes. A complete carbohydrate meal for one. Grilled cheese. The one-pan supper of melted cheese between buttered bread. The most reliable meal in the American kitchen, and still one of the cheapest. 2 slices of bread cost 22 cents. 2 slices of American cheese are 30 cents. A pat of butter is 5 cents. Total under 60 cents. You butter both sides of the bread. You lay cheese between them. You cook in a pan over medium heat until golden on both sides and the cheese melts. The bread goes golden and crisp. The cheese melts to the edge. It smells of butter and toasted bread. Grilled cheese came from American home cooking in the 1920s and has never left. It remains the most consistently satisfying one-person meal for under $1. Under 60 cents. 6 minutes. 1 pan to wash. Fried egg sandwich. The classic one-person supper of a single fried egg between 2 slices of buttered bread. The meal that requires the least and delivers the most. 1 egg costs 29 cents. 2 slices of bread are 22 cents. Butter adds 5 cents. Total under 60 cents. You fry the egg in butter until the white sets and the yolk stays soft. You lay it between buttered bread and press it flat. The egg is hot and rich. The yolk soaks into the bread. The butter ties it together. The fried egg sandwich came from universal working-class cooking. By the 1970s, it was the most common one-person supper in America, and it remains the most honest. Under 60 cents. 3 minutes. The meal that has never needed improving. Cottage cheese with tomato. The no-cook one-person supper of cottage cheese topped with sliced tomato and black pepper. A complete protein meal that requires no stove and almost no money. A half cup of cottage cheese costs 50 cents. 1 tomato costs 60 cents. Salt and pepper add nothing. Total under $1.15. You spoon cottage cheese into a bowl. You slice the tomato over the top. You add salt and heavy black pepper. The cottage cheese goes cool and creamy. The tomato is sweet and acidic. The pepper brightens everything. Cottage cheese with tomato came from Midwestern and Depression-era thrift cooking. By the 1970s, it was a one-person supper in health-conscious and budget-conscious homes. Under $1.15. 0 cooking. 20 grams of protein for 1. Fried rice from leftovers. The 5-minute supper that turned yesterday's leftover rice into a complete meal with a couple of eggs and a splash of soy sauce. Leftover rice costs nothing. 2 eggs are 58 cents. Soy sauce adds pennies. Total under 70 cents. You fry the rice in a pan over high heat with a little oil until it crisps slightly. You push it aside and scramble 2 eggs. You combine and splash with soy sauce. The rice goes crisp at the edges. The eggs scatter through. The soy sauce flavors everything. Fried rice from leftovers came from Chinese-American thrift cooking. By the 1970s, it was a one-person leftover rescue supper nationwide. Under 70 cents. 5 minutes. One of the best things you can do with yesterday's rice. Sardines on toast. The forgotten one-person supper of tinned sardines laid over buttered toast with a squeeze of lemon. One of the highest protein meals available for under $2. A tin of sardines costs $1.49. 1 slice of toast is 11 cents. Butter and lemon add 10 cents. Total under $1.75. You toast the bread and butter it. You lay sardines directly over the warm toast. You squeeze lemon over everything and add black pepper. The toast goes crisp underneath. The sardines are rich and salty. The lemon cuts through the oil completely. Sardines on toast came from European and coastal American thrift cooking. By the 1970s, it was a one-person supper in frugal homes nationwide. 12 grams of protein, omega-3 fatty acids, and calcium from the soft bones. Under $1.75. 3 minutes. More nutritious than almost anything else on this list.
Ramen with egg. The one-package supper that became a survival meal for students, widows, and anyone whose kitchen held almost nothing. Instant ramen noodles with a soft egg dropped in. A package of ramen costs 14 cents. One egg is 29 cents. Total under 45 cents. You cook the ramen in water. You crack an egg into the boiling broth and stir it gently until it sets into ribbons. You add half the seasoning packet and a drizzle of soy sauce. The broth goes savory. The noodles go soft. The egg enriches everything. Instant ramen arrived in America in 1970 and became the one-person budget meal of an entire generation. The egg turns it from a snack into a supper. Under 45 cents. 4 minutes. Surprisingly filling. Egg and onion scramble. The simple supper of caramelized onions scrambled with 2 eggs, one of the oldest and most satisfying one-person meals in the American kitchen. Half an onion costs 20 cents. 2 eggs are 58 cents. Butter adds 5 cents. Total under 85 cents. You cook the onions slowly in butter until golden and sweet, about 8 minutes. You pour beaten eggs over and scramble gently until just set. The onion goes sweet and almost jammy. The eggs go soft. The butter ties it together. Egg and onion scramble came from Jewish American and Eastern European home cooking. By the 1970s, it was a beloved one-person supper nationwide. Under 85 cents. 10 minutes. Deeply satisfying.
Chicken cacciatore. The Italian hunter's chicken simmered with tomatoes, peppers, and garlic until falling off the bone. A whole chicken cost 49 cents a pound in 1973. Today, around $2.99. Tomatoes, pepper, onion, and garlic. Total, then, under $2. Today, under $10. Fed 6. You brown chicken skin side down. You add tomatoes, pepper, onion, and garlic. You simmer 40 minutes. The sauce goes dark red and thick. The chicken goes tender. The kitchen smells like an Italian deli. Chicken cacciatore came from southern Italian peasant cooking. By 1973, it was in American cookbooks nationwide. Chicken in rich tomato sauce. A $2 Italian supper.